This set that you see here is for a children's book I am currently working on. All of the images in the book will be photographs of puppets and sets, and in today's video I'm going to explain how I sculpted this tree. Every set starts out as a small drawing called a thumbnail. Here I really try to piece together a nice composition, and then once I get something I like, this is actually used as an exact template when building the set. So here's the aluminum armature for the tree. I took the thumbnail and I blew it up to the scale that it's going to be, and then just kind of following the shape of the branches, I really just twisted a lot of different sized aluminum wires onto this 1/2-inch threaded rod that's going to run down the middle of the tree. This will offer a nice bit of support. It also allows me to screw into a piece of plywood as a base and into the set piece when that's finished. One thing I want to do with this tree is create a little bit of depth in the shot. So you can see that this branch comes forward, those two go back. The main branch kind of comes forward, and then these branches go back, and then this branch comes forward. So the next thing I'm going to do is start shaping the branches, and I'm doing this just with really long pieces of tin foil. I got the kind of like bulk roll of tin foil from Costco, and you can see that I'm just kind of like tearing off long pieces and kind of rolling them into these snake shapes, and then twisting them around the armature and just trying to come up with a shape that I think is going to look good. So here's the tree about halfway done, and it's just more of the same, different lengths and shapes of these tinfoil snakes, and I'm just kind of twisting them around each other and making what I think a tree might look like. I'm also using a lot of these little pins here to kind of like just push the tinfoil in and attach it to itself so it doesn't pop out all over the place. So here's the final tinfoil armature on top of the aluminum wire. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a glue gun and just kind of squish some glue into all of these little seams. And basically what that'll do is just make the whole thing a little bit more structurally sound, so then I could sculpt on top of it. So I got a little impatient with the glue gun, and I decided to use this expandable foam stuff here. This is called Great Stuff. It was kind of a little bit of an experiment, but I'm pretty happy with the results. So what I did is I just kind of tried to fill some of the cracks with this. I stuck it in a lot of the little cavities and holes and squirted it in there. It kind of expands and fills it out a bit. What I like about it is it created some nice new little bumps. It also kind of just puffed out some of the tin foil. And it's okay if it's super kind of messy right now, because basically all I just need is for the general shapes that I made with the tin foil to kind of support a clay on top of it and kind of give me some lines to follow as I sculpt it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some Magic Sculpt and start sculpting the final look and texture of this piece. So here's where I'm at the end of day one of sculpting the tree. You can see that Magic Sculpt is on about 75% of the tree, and I've really just been kind of following the shapes of the twisted tinfoil, and I've been using a whole bunch of wooden sculpting tools. And tomorrow I will finish putting the rest of the Magic Sculpt on, and if it dries in time I might start painting it. Magic Sculpt is an awesome material. It's one of my favorite things to sculpt with because when it hardens it's a super durable material, so great for structural stuff. If you're interested in learning more about it, there is a video on my YouTube page that gets more into the finer details of this material. And here's the final sculpt. So based on my drawing, the bottom right corner will be framed something about like this. So you can see that I did leave a little extra on the top and on the bottom and the far right. This just gives me a little bit of wiggle room when I'm kind of organizing the composition, and you can see that I did not sculpt the back side because I know it will not be in the picture, so that saved me a little bit of time and a little bit of money. So I sculpted the tree assuming that I'm going to be looking straight on at it, but I sculpted the back left side a little bit, so it does give me the opportunity to angle the tree counterclockwise a little bit if I feel like that's going to be a better composition. So now we get into painting. The first layer of paint is a wash with a Van Dyke brown. After I've covered a section of the tree with the wash, I'll go back with a rag and lightly pat it down a bit. This just kind of adds to some of the highlights because you're removing some of the paint off the highlighted areas. It's also kind of a random pattern, so it's also creating a little bit of texture, and it's also highlighting the actual texture that's carved into the tree. A wash just means I'm adding a little bit of water to the paint. This makes it a little bit more fluid, so it can really kind of drip into all of the little cracks and crevices, and this really just kind of accentuates all the detail and all the shadows. I do have a couple other videos on my channel here that get into some of the finer points of putting washes on, but it is a great technique to use, especially if you're going to be doing some dry brushing on top. Next, I take a spray bottle that has a very diluted mix of ochre yellow acrylic paint. And this is just kind of randomly sprayed around the tree. It just adds a little bit of very subtle color variation in certain spots and makes it look a little bit more natural and organic. And I do the same thing with the rag, where I kind of lightly pat it in certain areas, and this just adds to kind of the random blotchy texture. I want the color palette on the tree to be fairly simple, so I'm only going to be using the Van Dyke brown and the yellow ochre. But the great thing about this technique is you can really build up as many different layers as you like and really get a lot of nice texture and color variation. So now the first layer of dry brushing. Dry brushing just means that there's a very little amount of paint on the brush, and I'm really just dusting it across the surface of the piece. So the paint is really just highlighting the raised parts of the sculpture. And I'm using a titanium white here, which is a super bright white, so it's really just creating highlights, and because it doesn't get into the recessed areas, it's also really making the dark shadows in there pop out more. And I'm using a fairly large brush here. This is actually a large brush for painting houses, but it's a big set piece, so it's nice to be able to cover a lot of area. And this is a second layer that I'm putting on right here. And it does look extremely white, but I know that once the set piece is in front of camera and with all of the lighting, that the contrast will really be cut down a lot. So I don't mind that it's super high contrast right now. There's also a lot of dry brushing examples on some of my painting tutorials, mostly on smaller figures, but all of these techniques can be applied to larger scale pieces. So that is it for this video. Thanks for checking it out. Feel free to like it or share it or leave a comment. All of that stuff helps YouTube's algorithm push it out to a wider audience. So until next time.
Don't panic, don't jump it, don't stop the just rap. Don't panic, don't jump it, don't stop the just rap. Don't panic, don't jump it, don't stop the just